All this stuff can be ordered online. The foam and the kite spar and everything can be ordered. I'm sure pantyhose and fabric can be too. I try to cut all my stuff before I actually assemble it. Normally it makes things go along a little easier. If you want to make a 34 or anything really, you take it by the first number and you have to cut off 2.5 inches. Yeah, 31.5. So normally what I just do is I count up to the thing, then just count backwards by 2.5. And the tip actually ends up giving it about 1.5 inches off the core, and then you're gaining 1 inch from the pommel itself. You grab your little 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch cap, packing tape, try to go over it in an X first. This gives the head of the foam something to actually back up against, so it's not just going straight down. Pinch it down on all the sides. Give it one more around that. Sure. Like a decently strong backing to it, so it's not just caving into this open hole. And you're going to take the little 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch cube that we cut, grab your glue, and you improvise a brush real quick. The EVA foam that we're going to be using for this piece right here is going to have a rubber backing on one side and a foam backing on the other. I normally just use the rubber backing side because I'm crank wrapping this anyway, so it doesn't really matter if it has to have a huge grip. Put a little bit on there. You need to dap both surfaces in sort of a light, even coat and wait for them to get tacky like the back of a sticker. Or just put it on there, and then we're going to wait for a minute or two. Both sides are tacked, so you're just going to stick them on there with your thumb. You can use duct tape or packing tape for this. It's not really like not really a huge difference between the two. I normally just do packing tape because it's thinner. I'm trying to keep the tip of this thing as low profile as I can. So I'm just putting a square over it. We're going to be doing the same sort of thing that I did before, where I just pull down two sides at once. Just like that. And then pull down the other sides at the same time. And then spin those around. Now you just got a super tight wrapped square head on there. You get to the first part of gluing. For this, I start using DAP. We will be using 3M later, but that's really only on the sheet glue. Or I mean on the foam sheets. So on the core, you're going to want to put a line of DAP up the core. You're just going to use your foam sponge and sort of work it back and forth all the way up and down so you have like an even coat. Sort of turn it in the light so that you can see where there's any dry spots. Sometimes it can take a few passes. As long as you focus on the top 6 inches of the weapon, as long as that's really well glued on there, that's the main point that matters. You go on something that's really only having one point of contact so it can dry evenly around it. So this foam sheet is going to be a 7 inch by 21. 7 on the width, 21 on the length. It's got the box performance and durability, but it's got the same sort of weight that the spiral does.
Okay.
Because most of the spiral wraps will come out a lot faster and thinner and lighter, but the box in the middle gives it a lot more constructive durability as opposed to the normal spiral wrap. So with this one, instead of having the tip blow out like a spiral normally does, because it has just the whole thing wrapped up to the 2 inch diameter and then just one cap, it's only got one big sheet of contact, so that cap blows off more likely. With this, you have the first wrap, then you cap that, then you move on to the second wrap. And that goes around the inside layer and only gives it the one point of contact like a normal box would. So it doesn't have the same sort of tip blowout problems. I like to glue the edges and then add some on the top 6 inches of the weapon for durability. I try to get the blade to be as light as possible so that I can back weight it and then sort of improve the balance. And the 3M glue being in the middle of the bat, for the most part, doesn't really have any difference. So as long as it's DAP up there, you have the same sort of durability. Grab 3M. Make sure that it is not clogged to the tip, because 3M always does. There we go. And give it one. Anywhere that you don't have DAP, you just sort of fill in with the light spray of 3M. Check in on this. It's tacky most of the way up and down. So I'm going to give it one more light pass with some DAP. You can normally tell if it feels like a brand new sticker, and that's when it's ready. So you just wave around in the air. If it's like slightly windy or a little warm out, it should cool down fast. So normally the first layer of DAP that you put into it ends up getting sucked up, and it just feels like there's no DAP there. So once the first one's been absorbed into it, you do one more pass on this as well, and then you wrap. So if you have a heat gun, it heats, move it along a little faster. If you don't have a heat gun, you can just get a blow dryer. They sort of do the same thing, but heat gun works a little bit more efficiently. Just give it like some even passes over the spots that you've glued. Don't really focus too long in one area, or otherwise it'll bubble and just warp and melt your foam, and then want to have a piece and you'll have to buy more, and none of us have that kind of money. So now that you have that dry, do your secondary layer on here, and then you'll be ready to attach. Now it is important to remember that you do have to do 2 layers on this kind of foam. With blue foam and a lot of foams that are closed cell with a laminated face, it's fine. But since this closed cell has an open face and it's very porous, it gets absorbed. Some parts the foam's starting to bow, which means you gotta take the heat gun off of it. Once about you think it's done, make sure that the top piece is lined up here. The actual core, because otherwise it just hangs loose on the side. You're going to do your first roll. You want to put both your hands on here sort of evenly and go for a good amount of pressure. Make sure that you're not turning or overlapping on this side, that this line is completely straight along with this one. But before you complete this turn, you're going to bevel the edge on the inside there. You're going to take a razor, put it at about a 45-degree angle inward. Make sure that you have a brand new razor as well, otherwise you're just going to rip your foam apart. And you bevel, starting from the back and slowly moving forward towards the front. It doesn't have to be a perfect bevel. The cleaner that you can get it, the easier this is going to mold into one piece. And you can sort of do the same thing as you did up before, where you just do 1 layer on the inside, then a second layer on the top 6 inches and the bottom 2 inches. Because those are the main points that actually need to be held. The rest you can just go over 3M. So now we have most of it covered in DAP. Spray a little bit of 3M over that just to be safe. And add the second layer to the top 6 inches. If you go over, that's fine. It's preferred you go over. Less than that, your tips will probably blow apart really fast. Once it's tacky enough, keep rolling. This part of the spiral is actually what gives it its durability. So I'm going to repeat that process a few more times. Try to spread it as much as you can, that way you don't have to keep doing this. Sometimes I just go around to the other side because I know it's going to go that far anyway. Continue rolling. Now you're just about there. Once you hit the end, you're going to have to roll and put a lot of pressure on it. The way it actually joins, you just run your hand down and squeeze like that. Normally works its way on there. Just make sure that the seam line going all the way up is completely connected and there's no spaces. And that the glue there is already dry, because if there's any loose glue right there, that's just going to slowly start pulling its way apart. You're going to do the bevel. Just a slight bevel is necessary, not a huge one. Change out your blades too, because if you don't change out your blades, you start getting unsmooth cuts. And we'll slowly work your way all the way down. This one's a lot more solid than the other one was. So this is basically your substitute box. It's like a spiral, but instead of forming the box layer where you have 2 on the sides and then 2 more, where you just sort of sandwich it. This one is just sandwich rolled all the way up. So then from there, you're going to grab one of those 2x2 EVA mats. Try to do it with the pour side down, that the rubber's facing up. If you can find EVA mats without the rubber backing, it just helps for grip. Sometimes Harbor Freight has the one with no backing. If it's thin, you can just go at it with a razor and sort of very thinly like grade off that. I've done it with a sander before. I've seen some people take just a big old belt sander and put it up against the backing of it and just until it's off. But the rubber backing doesn't change it a whole lot. We'll start on the porous side. You can make a little X or a little dot, whatever you want to do. And here, you can dip a little bit down on the sides if you want. I have to do 2 coats for everything. I just prefer it. Makes everything go along a little quicker. Both the EVA and the L2000 white foam that I'm using have the open pores on each side, so it is necessary to double layer on both of them. 2000 also reacts a lot easier. It's a lot more sensitive to heat than the EVA foam is. With the EVA, you can sort of see the pores close and choke up. With this, you can sort of see it inflate if you get heat a little too close to it. It doesn't really have any durability, like repercussions, at least that I've noticed, as long as it's not a lot. Like that should be fine, but if you let these out in the heat, they do kind of bubble up eventually.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's weird. So if it's rapidly expanding and then cooling and then foaming back up and then going back down over the course of a few days, your weapons will just fall apart. I've seen it at Chaos Wars before, like even blue foam does the same thing. It's just kind of sad. So now you have your 2x2 on the end there. It's going to be capped off, and you're going to have some salvage left on the sides, these little corners. What I normally do is I just put it down like that, grab my razor, make sure it's a new blade, then I just sort of glide straight down, and I turn it as I go. So I'll go one side, turn, another side, turn, another side, turn, until it's completely butted up against the core there. Go right back, and I'll cut off the ears. Turn, turn, turn. You're kind of doing like a little octagon. So in the end there, you get a janky looking little octagon. We're going to secure down the head of this. A little bit of a pull. Not a huge tug, just a little one. I have to slightly compress the tip. An X with 2 pieces of tape, pulling down on the sides. Roll them on the table. Help even them out. It's basically the same as what you've been doing before. And you're left with that. So you want to be careful with actually going perpendicular on the foam with any kind of tape. So you can do it parallel just fine, tape up and down. But if you're running it perpendicular, basically the hard line of the tape will start eating into the foam the more it's being used. Duct tape normally doesn't have an issue as often. Packing tape can kind of have that problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to not completely engulf the head. I'm just going to go about 1 inch up. And have a slightly tight wrap. And just spin it until it's down and even. Now we have that head. The issue of the tape running perpendicular doesn't really occur there. So this is basically just giving it an extra hold onto the core at the bottom. You'll notice a pattern of the same sort of specific technique of 1 piece of tape, 2 pieces of tape. Yeah. Well, you learn. This piece is a 15 by 21. So it's wider and it's the same length. It's always good to have a template spare. The salvage on the bottom is a little rough, but that doesn't really matter too much. This is at the very bottom of the blade. Same thing as before, really only focus on the top half of the weapon. A little more 3M. Grab our 3M again. Leave this guy to dry right here. Add a little bit more dap to the top here. And then we should be ready to glue. I normally try to face the seam on the opposite side, so that way it doesn't overlap a seam and become very annoying visually. Lining up the head. The spin doesn't really matter too much. The only thing that does matter is that you not have one seam and then try to start directly on that seam. By putting it on a different side, and then now that it's beveled, it becomes part of the wrap. So it fades into the overall spiral instead of just being this one like jolting side. But it's just easier overall to just crank wrap and compress. Start rolling. New razor every time, don't shred your foam. If you can do it in one nice long one, and that's best. A little more dap in there now. Make that join. I just gripped my brush against the surface, so I'd say it's probably pretty tacky. You sort of wave your flag around for a little bit. You double check, make sure it's all tacky and nice. You're gonna start rolling again. Now about this time, and your main goal is to have this layer connect with the layer from the beginning. Once these two parts meet up, that should give you right about legal diameter, and yep, there we go. Perfect. So we're gonna join it up right about where that seam is. 3M in there. We have all this salvage left off here. Let's just grab a ruler, line it up, and try to get it as straight as possible across this thing. And make a line. Just kind of go very lightly, don't really put pressure on it. Just kind of drag along the top, and as long as you get about halfway through the 1/4 inch, you get 1/8 of the way through, it will just peel right off like that. And now we have that. We begin our bevel. Make sure that seam line is pressed in. One good roll. So now you're gonna make, this is important that you use the same kind of foam as this, the L2000 foam, as opposed to the EVA caps we've been using before. Main reason for this is that the EVA capping the tip of the weapon is gonna make your stab tip like impossibly hard. You're gonna be starting with the L2000 since the EVA is already backing at the very end there. It's gonna be an L2000 followed by a yoga mat on the head. You wanna have like a straight line across or as close to one as you can get. Slide through there. Get rid of all that. So now that you've got it down to flat, you're going to glue this and this to sandwich them together. It just gets stuck to the bottom. If you have any spills, it's fine because then you just wipe it up on there and use it on the cap. That was on purpose. I did that on purpose. Yeah, that worked. On both sides. Just gonna do the same things before. We're gonna that sit in, pop a new razor on there, and the same things before where you have the cap. We're gonna go straight lines first. Whoops, sorry. And then after that, you're gonna do chopping the corners. Try to go back over as many times as you have to. Alright, so now that's capped, you got like sort of a semicircle octagon thing. Come on, glue. Make sure your 3x3 piece is big enough. Yeah. A beautiful natural noise. Join them together. Chop off all the excess. So now you have the secondary little semicircle on there. So we're going to start with running parallels to the blade, and a few inches down onto the handle, running all the way up the length of the bat. I'm going to cut it off here. You don't have to, but I normally use like a sanding block, and then I roll it on the table, overlap about a ½ inch between all the strips. Keep rolling. Make sure that you're giving a good amount of pressure over the entire length of the bat. You've completed the entire trip around. You're going to go on the bottom. I just like to start here, give it a real good grip, and then just spin. Give it a parallel crank right there. So then you have this at the top. I normally do the same thing up there.
Yeah, I remember I was in the
Slow spin.
Oh wait, this is that part. I think I just saw it.
And just sort of cut that. I give it one parallel around the top, and I try to make sure I only go about 1/4 to a ½ inch underneath where this seam is. It gives the tip a little more durability. So about a ½ inch down below that seam. Not even going to go very tight. I'm just going to go one around. I'm just going to roll it on the table. Not a lot of pressure. You don't want to make the tip super compressed. It's 2½. Does not fall through by any means. Now you're done with the blade. Thigh highs or pantyhose from just about any Walgreens 99-cent store or Walmart. Throw that over the tip. Grab a little strip of tape. Stick the tape on there, and then I just turn it around so the sticky side's facing out. Pull the sock over. Tight enough that it's not going to pull up, but not tight enough that you can see the bat underneath. Pinch it off at the bottom. So now the sock grips to the tape, and then you use another strip of tape to completely secure it. Cut off the excess at the bottom. And use another piece of masking tape or packing tape, whichever you have laying around. And just crank wrap at the bottom there. If you have a scale, counts ounces, very handy. Really don't suggest building a weapon without one. They're like 15 to 20 bucks on Amazon, Target, or Walmart. 6 3/4 right now ounces. So we got this little bolt right here, about 0.8 ounces. We're gonna start by wrapping that in tape just so it's got a bit of squeeze room in there, so it doesn't go in easy. Then I just grab a mallet and just pressure fit it in. Wrap around with that. Like 2 or 3 times. It's just making the worst noises I've ever heard. Just take some 3M. Pommel's going to be mostly secured by tape anyhow. Start it off on there. Give it one turn. Once you connect the first time, Gorilla Tape. I normally try to use mostly Gorilla Tape and duct tape on the pommel. It's just super, super crank wrapped. Everything on the pommel is basically just like crank wrapping and putting tons and tons of pressure on it. My pommel's come out like very, very, very solid. It's normally recommended to put maybe a little bit of a thin layer of softer foam on the outside, just so they don't come out like the most painful things that you've ever experienced. Your little 1x1. Just pull a strip off, strip that in half, and make a little X with it. Crank that down really hard. Crank that down as well. Finish that off at the bottom with some packing tape. Try to help connect the pommel to the handle. We use that strip again. Should still be pretty tacky. Wrap that around again. And once you join up to the other end, cut that. Crank again with the Gorilla Tape. Spin that down there, secure it. Just press it in at the bottom. Now the last piece is going to be the 2" by 2". Now they're both tacky. Stick that on there. Put the corners. Pull off some more Gorilla Tape, cut that into strips. Put that over the top like an X there, on each at the same time. So you pull evenly on both sides as it comes cranked down into the pommel. And your packing tape again. And spiral it down onto the handle. And add a little more towards the top there, make it more secure. Alright, so now it's at 8.2. So now we're going to start by spiral wrapping this tape backwards up the handle. Sticky background. It saves you on glue. The dap's not really going to be helpful here. Take some string. You can use paracord or any kind of like nylon string from any kind of supply store. It's super cheap and easy to find. I normally start about 1 inch down on the handle, but that's not really necessary. That's more just to blend in for me. So I like the handle to go in smooth. I normally try to stop it about 1 inch from the bottom of the pommel so that it can flow into the handle a little better. Since you've been taping it up this entire time, it does give you some bumps that you're going to have to work around now. I'm going to go from the top and spin it down the handle to cover the entire thing. It's going to help prevent the string from turning on the handle. Turn your scale on again, check the weight. It's at just about 9 ounces now. We shove all 4 of these into the pommel, get it up to 11 ounces. So now you have the pommel pre-built into this sort of rock shape. What I like to do is cut into the top at an angle, and then I face the bullets down. Slide them in right there. Sort of grab a mallet. If you have pliers, that works even easier. You can put the bullet weights in before, but this is a way for you to sort of gauge as you go and add weight exactly as you want it. So I need to make the holes deep down into the pommel. I'm going to put the X on there again and use a lot of pressure for this, because now you have those weights to work around. So they kind of help to shape the pommel a little bit. Gorilla Tape is the main thing making a lot of this work. This Gorilla Tape is very thick. It actually helps to coat over those things and crush them in really well. So Gorilla Tape is highly recommended. You put the bullets in first, you basically just kind of put them in like an X. I would do a single wrap outwards of tape, then put the bullets in facing up, so the heavy end towards the bottom, short end towards the top. They'd be facing upwards, one on this side, one on this side, so they form like a little X, and then I would just crank wrap tape around them. And then you sort of do the same sort of build around that. In a lot of cases, that's what I would do. For some newer fighters, it's kind of hard because they can't gauge how much weight to put in there beforehand. So they might end up overweighing or underweighing. If you stab into the top end of the pommel and just kind of start hammering them in like that, it's a little more, janky at first to deal with, and it's a little more effort, but it's a lot easier for some noobs to weigh. It would be easier for a noob to weigh his weapon just based on looking at it, pulling it up, hammering another one in, putting it back down, and crank wrapping. The balance point is, towards the lower end of the weapon. So we won't really have to worry too much about that. So what we're going to start doing is, now that we're at 11 ounces, I'm going to keep crank wrapping on this pommel here. Now, it's going to be a bunch of wraps with the packing tape. I normally prefer packing tape for pommels. Packing tape just helps you get like a very smooth, like tight texture to it. It just helps round everything out, and it doesn't look like jaggedy and janky like duct tape does. So over a lot of layers of masking, a lot of layers of packing tape, it helps to smooth out stuff, which is just my one happy thing about it. There we go. So now, you also have to pay attention to make sure your handle and pommel are not more than 12 inches in length. If it's unpadded, then your weapon's going to fail. We're at 11.15 right now, so we're going to continue adding weights to the handle. Once again, only at 11.5. Try to work on, right now, building some tape around the handle. It'll help build up the handle thickness, so it'll make it a little bit more comfortable. Now we're at 11.3. We're going to add another strip down here to help it not be a super solid, rock hard, painful thing.
And everyone's depressed all the fucking time.
Now that you have that wrap done, you're going to cut that edge. Dated, because I still go to events and see people with curved weapons, and I'm like, why? Why? What's the point? Anyway. So you use Gorilla Tape on this part of the pommel, because if you use Gorilla Tape on this part of the pommel, Gorilla Tape is a really easy, cheap way to add weight. If you just need a little bit more, but not a whole lot more. And even though it's thicker than normal tape, it's still relatively thin, so it doesn't make anything too bulky. 11.64. So we're almost there. I use Wilson wrap on my handles. You don't necessarily have to. It's more preference. Wilson wrap normally accumulates about 0.2 ounces. I'm at 11.64 right now, so, and it'll only be at 11.8 if I add this on. Fabric. We have a 7-inch by 7-inch square of whatever kind of fabric you need. I normally try to do thinner fabrics just so that way it doesn't bulk up the pommel any more than necessary. Make sure that you don't have any actual completely solid pieces from the core poking out through the out of the pommel. You're going to take your same sort of little string of tape. It doesn't have to be this small, I just happen to have this so it works. Put it around the base of the pommel and you're going to wrap it backwards again. Now we're going to take this piece of fabric, I'm going to stretch it down over the pommel. You can use it every way you want. I normally just squeeze it down over and it works pretty well. Take another piece of tape, I try to put it as far down in the pommel as I can. I like to have it as small as I possibly can. Put another bit of tape around it, shrink the actual size of it. Cut that, and now what I do is I actually cut back into the pommel again. We're going to cut off a bunch of the excess fabric. Now, it's fine, we're just trying to minimize the size of the pommel and the handle. 11.85. But if you like to grip in Saber Grip, here's a little trick for you. You build maybe a 1/2 inch, maybe a little smaller, strip of tape, and you build it up about where you grip on the handle. Note where my finger is, where I normally grip it, where it's comfortable for me. Mark it with a little piece of Sharpie or something. I'm going to strip this tape in half, and we're going to do a ring around here. It's going to be forming a sort of grip for you. It's like a little teeny bump on the handle. Some of them like it, some of them don't, so it's more of a try it if you want, but it does help to add a little extra weight as well. Ribbed for my preference. Closest we can get, because that way it helps to not get failed at events. Some events can have wrong scales. Maybe your scale's wrong, maybe the event scale's wrong. I've had it happen both ways. So it's good to not really just hit it just exactly at 12. Sometimes it's better to just do 12.1, 12.2. Some people do 12.5. If you do 12.5, make sure you put it towards the end of the pommel so that way at least you have a real good balance.